Hello, Cubs fans, and welcome to a brand new edition of Cubs on Tap. I am Ron Luce, and I am joined by two of the three that we originally announced on our episode. Unfortunately, Juice had some things to attend to. I'm not going to spoil his surprise. He can announce that on the next show. We all know what happened. It's all good things. All good things. All is good with Juice, but just some obligations that came up this evening. Nonetheless, Ron Luce, joined by Nick Hudson and Mr. Joey Ricotta. Gentlemen, first off, this is the first time I've seen you two this offseason on a microphone, that is. How are we doing, boys?
Doing well. What's up?
It's good to see you guys. It's been too long. It's been too long. And Joey,
too long.
First time you've been on a Cubs on Tap since being a married man. How's it feeling? How's things? You know, anything you want to share with the viewers at home? Everybody's been wondering where's Joey, and we had to tell him Joey's busy. He's got a wedding to prep for. He's got a honeymoon to go on. Wondering where you been.
Yeah, man. Not a whole lot's changed as far as like day to day goes. I would say I'm a lot more freed up than I have been this entire year. And apologies to you guys and to anyone that's been looking for me, I guess. And the hashtag Where's Joey community, I guess we've started up here at Cubs on Tap. But it's been a lot going on this last year, as I'm sure some are aware what goes on with, wedding planning and all that sort of stuff. So I'm like, it's weird that like I feel like I have a little bit more time. There's been family birthdays that have been happening on weekends and stuff. So like not quite as free as like I thought we would be at this point. But and of course, yesterday was mine. And so I completely forgot, boys. My license expired. Typically it does on your birthday, and yeah. I'm like, oh well, okay. So like my work is like, you can't drive anymore for work. You need to get this figured out. And I'm like, okay, well, let me go down to the DMV. They're like, just go straight to the DMV, go get it figured out. Now, little did I was not aware, and I guess maybe I just forgot this, that you need to make an appointment now for the DMV. So I got there, and they wouldn't let me do what I needed to do to renew my license and take the test and all that. And so this morning, woke up, and they're like, they only release the appointments the morning of, so you can make an appointment online and show up and go do your thing. And so I did that, got my license. But I will say the DMV used to suck, and now the DMV is like, I love it. I love this new. I hated it yesterday when I showed up and was like, oh, what do you mean I can't do it? And you guys are open. And they're like, we're closing in 5 minutes anyways. There's no way. There's no more appointments that you can set online. I'm like, it says on Google, you're open till 5:30. It's 5 o'clock. What do you mean you're closing in 5 minutes? Whatever. Go there today. And it's like a super fast process. Like you're not waiting in line for 10 years like you used to at the DMV. I'm like, okay, I kind of like this new formula, DMV. Thank you, COVID, or whoever brought this shit on. But no, I don't know. Back to your actual original question. Things are good, and I'm hoping that I actually have a lot more time to be on the microphone and talk Cubs, even though, it wasn't that fun to talk Cubs this year. I enjoy though talking with you guys and going to games with you guys. So let's see what this next year brings. I'm always optimistic until I'm not optimistic. So right now I'm optimistic, I guess.
You're a better man than I, Joey, because I am already pessimistic about the Cubs too. And we haven't even gotten to December yet, but that's neither here nor there. Joey, I think everybody appreciated a good story time with Joey. It's been a while since we've had one of those on the microphone. And honestly, dude, I can kind of relate to where you're coming from. And this is something I really haven't talked to. We've done 2 off-season episodes now since the conclusion of the World Series. Those were both Tyler and myself. But even Tyler and I didn't really talk about like just how kind of it wasn't really fun to talk Cubs this year, even though they had the same record and as they did in 23. But it felt like 23 was so much more fun. I think because there was no expectation, and it was like, oh, maybe there's a building block here, whereas this past year, obviously there was an expectation attached to the season. And, when that expectation isn't met, obviously, so is the disappointment effectively of fans. So I can relate to that. Nick, what's new with you, man? since the World Series concluded? Anything fun and exciting?
Yeah, well, I have a new job, so I've taken
love
on a
that.
new
Congrats.
job as an account manager at Line 5 for finance and insurance solutions. So that's been pretty much the majority of my time lately is my job.
So if we need a guy, we can come to you. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah.
If we need a guy,
You need a guy, come to me.
you need a guy,
But
you got a guy.
I agree with you guys. It was not fun to talk about. It wasn't. I think it was painful to get on the mic certain nights because of just how puzzling it was to me. I was just shocked at how bad the product was on the field.
Painful for a variety of reasons.
Yeah.
Whether you were eating 9 hot dogs in 9 innings or
Remember that challenge you did?
down. That was fun. Blew it out of the water. I knew we could, but I did not feel good by the end of that. That was
I
not
could
the
imagine
greatest.
that. Nick,
Not the greatest.
so you guys remember when Juice said it was on one of the shows? I don't remember which one, but he was like, "What are you doing with this thing?" You know, actually, I had one that was like half. It was like my insurance headset. He called it or something. The guy with the? What are you going to sell me some insurance? And I had like
The
one
customer support headset. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, so if we actually need insurance now, or actually if you need like a headset to replace this one, I know I can go to Nick because you might
There you
have.
go.
There you go.
He's gonna have your insurance headset. Yeah.
That's it.
Well,
I don't know
speaking
why I
of
thought
Juice, we do miss Mr. Juice. He was supposed to join us tonight again, just for those jumping in late. And Joey, a happy belated birthday to you. Sorry, I know we all wished you a happy birthday yesterday, but officially on the airwaves for everybody
On the
listening.
airwaves, happy birthday.
Happy
Appreciate you guys.
birthday
Thank
to you, my friend. And just like everybody listening along, and our friend Daniel Berry Sports Highlights here says, hey, what's up, everybody? Join the comment section, especially as we get into the nuts and bolts here of Cubs discussion. Because, guys, I'll tell you what, the first 2 shows this offseason that Tyler and I did were a lot of hypotheticals, pretty much sandwiched around the Bellinger news was the way we kind of did the shows. The first show we did, what do we think Belly's going to do? Here's what we'd like to see the Cubs do. The second show was Belly's opted in. Here's what the Cubs can do now. That's all we've talked about. But now there's some more reports starting to come out. The hot stove is starting to heat up a little bit. And at least there's rumors, even if they're not true, even if they're a load of bullshit at the end of the day, we still have rumors to talk about. And obviously the biggest piece of news that kind of relates to the Cubs in some way, shape, or form, but it isn't confirmed necessarily to the Cubs, is that of Roki Sasaki. He is officially posted, which is obviously huge news. They didn't have to post him, right? That was the big key. He hasn't hit that level of years in the NPB where they'll post him and he gets paid like Yamamoto did, or he gets paid like Shota did, or something like that. It's the Shohei Ohtani the first time around treatment. So he can only make, I think it's like $5 million, I think is where he can top out at. It's pretty much all signing bonus money. And he signs as if he's like a minor league free agent, more or less, which for teams that are either A, trying not to spend a ton of money, or B, already have a ton of money allocated to other resources, the Los Angeles Dodgers, for example, that's fantastic that you're going to get him on a cheap contract. And obviously the Cubs have already been linked to him. Now, whether or not we know that's true or not remains to be seen. But obviously there's the fit in terms of the Japanese culture on the roster, Shota Imanaga, as well as Seiya Suzuki. You can make the same argument for that of the Dodgers, obviously with Shohei Ohtani and with Yamamoto. But gentlemen, do you really think, like, this is what I need to know? Because I've been sitting here pounding my head off the metaphorical wall thinking about this. Do you really think that the Cubs have any shot at Roki Sasaki?
No.
Tell me.
I don't.
No.
I think he's going to the Dodgers. I really do.
See, that's where my gut goes too.
Yeah.
And I think you start
for some reason.
That's exactly, to me, it's the Mets, it's the Dodgers, it's the Yankees. And I can see the argument, right? Like I can see the argument of, well, the Cubs, they have the Japanese, he's supposedly, there was a report that came out, I believe it was just today or yesterday, that says he is actually valuing things other than just like the baseball team, like comfort of life and things like that. So I think because of that, maybe there's a little bit of hope for Chicago, given what we saw Shota Imanaga go through with falling in love essentially with the city. But I find it so hard to believe that the Cubs have any real shot at Roki Sasaki. And I want to believe, right? He's young. He's obviously uber talented. No shot at the Cubs pitching staff the way it is. Obviously, it was top 10 in baseball last year in terms of ERA, but he gets here, he's immediately your most talented pitcher on the roster, and there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it, in my opinion. But it feels like such a long shot for the Cubs. And quite frankly, I feel like I've been kicked in the dick enough by this franchise to kind of feel like it's probably not going to happen, but I would love to see it happen.
It's a microcosm of a bigger issue where it should be a more attractive destination, but it's not because of decisions have been made. Just you look at the Dodgers, Ohtani, Yamamoto. How can you not choose that over, the Chicago Cubs? And that's unfortunately the place we're in right now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree. And I also think that, the other options on the table too, like the Mets and the Yankees have shown that both of those franchises or organizations are much closer than the Cubs. So as an outsider, what would make you choose the Cubs unless you especially someone coming from Japan how well up on teams' farm systems do you think he is? If you you would have to really believe in whatever they can do, which we'll get to, at trade markets or development. And we've already been down this road before talking about all this. And frankly, I'm kind of getting sick of it at this point. But he would really, it's what you said originally, like what you guys have said about he would have to fall in love with, I think, Chicago and the connection between possibly, Shota or Seiya or both. And is that likely to happen again like Shota did? I don't think it's that likely. I don't know what else you can offer this guy that would make it that much more appeasing to him. And it's sad to say because I wish they were truly in the running for a guy like him when, especially like you said, it's not going to really be a ton of money, at least in the beginning. Right. So it's kind of sad.
I think that's the frustration, right? You guys nailed it perfectly. It's not even like the Cubs can say, oh, well, we were close and we just need you, Roki Sasaki. It's not like that, right? At least the Dodgers are coming off winning a World Series. The Yankees got to the World Series and the Mets got to the NLCS. These are all three of the four teams that were the Final Four in baseball are at the table for him. So, of course, and New York and LA being the big cities that they are, just like Chicago is, that's also appealing. But you guys nailed it perfectly. The Cubs are not ready to compete. Hell, I don't even know if they're ready to compete in their own division, let alone in the NL as a whole. And as long as the Dodgers are the Dodgers, they probably, more likely than not, unless you get lucky and, the cards kind of fall the correct way, they're probably going to own the NL for better part of the next 10 years. Realistically, right? You have a shot if you win your division, at least get in the playoffs, but there's no guarantee because you're going to have to walk into the buzzsaw that is the Dodgers, and have to figure it out from there. Our Lorne Soldier, who was not going to be able to join us tonight, has a comment here. Mr. Tyler Edmonds, he says, "What's up, boys? I think Shohei and Yamama walk into the negotiations with Sasaki, flop the big trophy on the table, and just walk out. That's how the deal to the Dodgers gets done." I don't think he's wrong, right? You're coming off a championship. You have Shohei Ohtani making $2 million for the next 9 seasons. And then on top of that, you have Yamamoto, you have Mookie Betts, you have Freddie Freeman. Some of these guys are starting to get older, but they're still playing great baseball. Yeah. And they're probably going to continue to add. And they're getting healthy, right? You're going to get Tyler Glasnow back after not having him for your World Series run. They're probably going to sign a big pitcher. Tyler was talking about it in our circle amongst Cubs on Tap throughout the World Series that Corbin Burns would probably look really good in Dodger blue. And there's a possibility that he joins that super rotation because they can pay him.
I'm sick of them getting everybody, dude. Everybody.
Yeah. And it's, anyone
they want, they go get. I respect it. I'm so sick of it.
Yeah.
And it's all because of the decision that Shohei Ohtani made. And I'll tell you what, he didn't need the money. He makes plenty of money off the field as it is because he's such a superstar in the country of Japan. But in addition to that, he's also smart because I think his taxes are going to be implicated differently because of the deferred money, and he's never going to have to work a day in his life. His great-great-grandchildren are never going to have to work a day in their lives if he does this correctly. it's just frustrating, right? Because like this feels like the one free agent for the Cubs in terms of the big guns, since obviously they walked out on the Juan Soto and Corbin Burns sweepstakes, as we've already heard, which is a whole nother story and another load of bullshit in itself. But this is the guy. He's not going to cost you much, and he's a tangible improvement to pretty much any other pitcher you can bring in without having to give more than just compensation to, right? Obviously, yes, there's guys that can go trade for, and that would look great, but you're going to have to deal from your prospect pool. With Roki Sasaki, you don't have to. And you have a young pitcher who's just going to continue to get better, which would be just an absolutely beautiful thing. But gentlemen, another reason why, and as we kind of transition here, I do want to give some love to the comment section before we transition our topics here. Our friend Peter Porker, this is Brooksy for you guys that weren't sure. Beard looking strong. Oh, thank you. It's actually getting trimmed tomorrow, so don't get too attached to it by any means. Scott says hopefully Joey's connection is better now. It is, Scott. It's a little better. It is better.
It is better, I would say.
You've passed on the Joey bad technology itis to Tyler.
Well, sorry for sharing that janky stream with him.
Yeah, happens. It happens.
But you know what? I did have connection issues before we hopped on. I guess that's
true.
Connection. That was
we worked through some tech issues before we jumped on the show tonight. There's always one, right? There has to be.
Busted myself out though. I don't know why.
It's not a show with Joey Ricotta unless there's a technology issue. Jeremiah says, hello, beautiful people. He said, if Jed's serious about contending, they need Sasaki. I tend to agree. He also says Max Fried would be the Cubs' best offseason addition this offseason. And we can certainly open. Joey's got beer going everywhere. Hey, you pulled a me, Joey. I'm not the only one now.
Dude, this was sitting forever. How did that even happen? Like, it wasn't like I shook it or anything.
Maybe the ghosts in your house came and crack them.
Oh, this is terrible.
And shook it on you.
Everything.
It's just all over the place.
All right, you're gonna see me later. Can you mute me?
We'll quickly mute you there, Joey, so you can take care of business. Jeremiah also says adulting's hard, by the way. Don't even get me started, Jeremiah. We might do a whole adulting show at some point this offseason. But Nick, let's start talking about the reports while we wait for our friend Joey here to return to action. I'm just going to enjoy watching him clean up because this is going to be probably the most entertaining portion of this whole thing. I might have to take him off screen for a minute. We're just gonna remove him for 2 seconds. But Nick, the transition here away from Roki Sasaki is that reports have said, and again, believe what you read if you want to, but reports have said that the Cubs are going to be probably more involved in what's considered the middle tier pitching market. And two specific names that were mentioned were Nick Pivetta and Yusei Kikuchi. Now, if we're being honest, and I think I happened to tune into the guys over at Locked On Cubs, Matt Cozy and Sam Olber, and they said it, and I agree wholeheartedly. Both of those guys are still an improvement to this roster, right, at the end of the day. But hearing that the third biggest franchise in terms of revenue in baseball is going to fuck around with the teams in the middle tier is annoying. And I think that's where it's frustrating because, don't get me wrong, there's some good names on the pitching market in that mid tier. Other names would probably include the names like Nathan Eovaldi, who's a good pitcher. Maybe a Sean Manaea, who had a really nice season. Like, yeah, sure, they're guys that are nice additions, but yeah, those are guys that teams should be signing as like a 3 or 4 or 5 if you have, you're just trying to backfill a guy or you've already spent a lot of your money elsewhere in the offseason, right? Exactly. The Cubs realistically can only spend on pitching because unless they trade guys, which we're going to get to a little bit later here in the show, you're kind of limited on the free agent front. I know Jeremiah said Max Fried. Obviously, Max Fried would be a best case scenario. I know a lot of people are considering that, the Cubs are players for Max Fried. I don't necessarily know if that's true.
I just feel like Jed gets too cute sometimes. I really do with this like middle tier. He wants to find the guy that he can get cheap and then fix. And that's just like, it's a small market mentality. And I don't know why he's not taking a bigger, approach. You're such a large market. Like you said, the third largest market, and they just don't act like it. And it's infuriating. We try to look past it. We try to be optimistic and everything, which I think, of course we do as Cubs fans, but there's going to become a time where it's just too much and he's just getting too cute. And I think it's getting close for sure.
It definitely is. And I like what Scott says here. He says, who is the closer? Nobody. I've seen a lot of people believe that the Cubs are going to go hard on a closer. And there were other reports earlier this offseason that said the Cubs are targeting a top of the rotation arm. So again, a little contradictory toward their middle tier report, right? But also back end bullpen help. And I know amongst ourselves in our Cubs on Tap group chats, we kicked around the names like Camilo Duvall potentially as a trade option. But there are guys available on the market. Tanner Scott is out there. Clay Holmes is out there. So, the Cubs should spend some money in free agency. And I would like to see, if nothing else, maybe they're going to, maybe they don't spend on a big starting pitcher, but maybe they go ahead and they trade for a starting pitcher and maybe they spend on a closer. They have to do something. But I agree with you, Nick. Like, just hearing the middle market is annoying because they shouldn't be kicking around the middle market. Now, granted, Yusei Kikuchi had a very good season last year, about 180 innings of baseball, 200 plus Ks. Was really good when he got to Houston. Clearly something clicked in with the Astros, and maybe the Cubs saw that and were like, oh, that's what we would have done to improve him too. If you have a 200K guy, that's something that the roster doesn't have right now, right? So still a really good ball player to add to your roster, but is it really that big of an upgrade over a Kyle Hendricks from a year ago? I don't know. Joey's back with us here. How are we doing here, buddy? Oh, I got to unmute you. Hold on. There you are. Welcome back.
Am I good?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I don't know. I feeling like the modern day Cinderella around here, or maid or something, just cleaning up everything as we go. And then I thought somebody stole my phone and it was sitting here at the laptop. So I'm a mess right now, and I'm sorry.
Well, we'll bring it back in with some good Cubs talk here. But Nick shared his frustrations about the Cubs kicking around in the middle tier of pitching options. Are you just as frustrated, Joey, hearing that? Or do you think they can work magic? Are you still on your optimistic train here while people like myself and even Scott from Iowa saying no matter what they do, it's another 83-win season, are feeling a little more pessimistic about the Cubs right now?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to like the pitching itself, we were talking about Roki. Obviously, Roki would be great, right? I think there's a few options that would be really intriguing to me on the open market, and like you said, Yusei Kikuchi, I heard you just mention him. That would be a solid target or someone like that. But I don't mind the mid-tier or even somewhat lower tier pitchers, at least on the starting market. I would like them to really upgrade and get like an ace, like a true. And I feel like Steele and Imanaga and even Tyon, all three of those guys prove that they can be really, really solid pitchers in your rotation, whether it's ace level considered or not. Because we know from the history shows this on Justin Steele, he's not going to strike out a ton, but he's going to give you that low ERA to kind of resemble an ace, right? Like he's going to pitch you 6 solid innings, 7 solid innings on most nights or most days. And same goes for Shota, at least in his rookie year. Now, will that change next year? Possibly. He also did start giving up a little bit more home runs, especially as the season went on. And I think he gave up something like 27 home runs. So just imagine if there could be a little bit of regression there if, those home runs start to come with more guys on base. And that's the problem or the worry that you have with him. And then Tyon, we know how he can have some sporadic outings as well. And will he have as good of a year as he had last year, or will he kind of revert a little closer to the first year that he was with the Cubs? And so I think you would like ideally a little bit more stability in that rotation. But I guess I don't hate the idea of going a little bit more mid-tier with starting pitching if you can really upgrade the offense. And that's the other hard part that you run into is like you're kind of in this battle of where do you get each from? And I think there are more options available to you, at least from a positional standpoint too. It's very tricky. And we've had these conversations offline and you guys have on these shows, you and Tyler, it's very tricky to where you're going to get that impact from, at least from the hitting standpoint. So like the obvious answer is let's upgrade the pitching and get another ace and like try to steal some more games that way. But I would still prefer them to see them try a little bit harder in the hitting market. And if that comes at the expense of, the pitching market, which neither one should really be effective. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I'm getting a little sick of, like, let's stop nibbling around. Like, it's enough with the nibbling, and it's not like they're not. This is the thing that I think people have a hard time with when it comes to the Cubs, because Cubs fans in general, and like a lot of people just say the Cubs don't spend money. They don't spend money. No, they spend money. They don't spend money to where they can spend money.
Right.
Because in comparison to other teams, they spend a lot of money. So like they're up there in the ranks, and they also don't have, it's like where you're spending your money. Obviously with Cody Bellinger's opt-in, I don't hate that. I actually kind of like it, because I feel like he will have more of a positive regression this year after we kind of predicted the negative regression last year. Mm-hmm. I think he will perform a little bit better, at least in the power sense this year, but it's very tricky, man. Like it just goes to how you're going to construct this. You got to get creative. Like, I really feel like this is the year that you're going to have to get creative in the trade market, and in the open market itself from free agency. I don't know what they're going to do at all. And that's why I don't really take a stance on like which players I want them to actively get on the open market, because the obvious answer to me is Juan Soto, and then you figure it out from there. And I don't see that happening. So it's like everything else is kind of like, what trade are you going to pull off? And I do have an idea or something that's kind of been rumored here within the last, I guess today, that I want to talk about at some point.
Hold on to that, because we're going to get to the trade talk, because I agree with you, Joey. To me, just based on the way the team is structured, they're going to have to get creative in the trade market. To me, that's the way that they're going to tangibly get better, is in the trade market. I don't think this free agency cycle favors the Cubs for a variety of reasons, mostly because I think the names at the top of the pitching market are just guys they don't want to commit long-term money to because they're a little bit older, which I get, I understand, fine. But in addition to that, you have a lot of your lineup is effectively set. There's nobody that's really easy to just move in, move out, and without a tangible, like, oh, you got to consider X, Y, and Z variables. So we're going to get to that. But I do want to note one thing here. You were correct. 27 homers given up by Shota Imanaga. That was 5th in the NL.
It's a lot.
Yeah, not great, Bob. So, again, as teams continue to see him more, does that, mean that he's going to, not get worse per se, but maybe just be not as superhuman as he was as a rookie. In addition to that, following up your point about the markets, this is my favorite graphic that exists right now on the internet. It's from Brooksgate is the name of the page and of the group. They put together how much money every team made in 2023 revenue-wise in baseball, and then how much of that went toward their 2024 payroll. Okay? The
Not
top
enough.
team, and it's based on percentage of usage, so it's how much of the payroll compared to how much money they made. So the teams at the top of the list means they spent more of their earnings on their payroll versus just other things. The Mets were the number one team in baseball. 87% of their earnings was because of 87% of their earnings were spent on payroll. So that's how it played out, which was number one in baseball. $342 million was obviously by far the most payroll in baseball, but they made the 11th most amount of money. There's only 2 teams in baseball that made more money than the Chicago Cubs: the New York Yankees and the Los Angeles Dodgers. The Dodgers made $549 million and still found a way to spend 60% of that on their players because they had $330 million in payroll this year. And then in addition to that, the Yankees had made $679 million. But fun fact, the Yankees actually used less of their earnings than the Cubs did percentage-wise. Not by much, by 0.1%.
Ooh.
But they had a $316 million payroll, which was still third in baseball. But by making $679, you only used 46.5% of your earnings on your payroll. So that's a little jaded of a number, right? The Cubs were the 17th highest team in terms of how much of their earnings they used on their payroll. $506 million was the third most in baseball in 2023. They had the 10th highest payroll at $236 million, just under the salary tax threshold, the luxury tax. So 46.6% of their earnings went to payroll. And I think that's where some of the frustration lies with fans is even if you used 280 as your payroll, 275 as your payroll, I think fans would be a lot happier. And that's probably a few very tangible players that are going to upgrade your ball club. And that's where the I think the frustration is. But let's talk a little bit about this trade stuff now, because I know you guys have ideas. I've got some ideas. And this is kind of going to be the meat and potatoes of the show. They're going to have to make trades. Now, Jeff Passan kind of ignites the offseason with his big article. It's all the whispers he's hearing and his thoughts and opinions. And there's a lot that goes into it. Notably, with the Cubs, two names in particular were mentioned in potential trade talks. Cody Bellinger was one of those names. Nico Horner was the other name. Now, these two names make sense, and I'm actually in the process of writing an article for OnZapSportsNet.com. It'll be coming out on Friday about what to make of those rumblings. And immediately, of course it makes sense because those two players make a ton of money. And they are going, at the end of the day, they're going to make, I got distracted here by Jeremiah. He's asking who's snoring. I could hear it too on the back end. I think somebody's got background noise going right now.
I know who it is.
Oh, really? Oh, man. Oh,
Too funny.
Again.
That totally took me out. I was not ready. Joey's got to go. Holy shit! I need to recollect for a second. I saw your comment of who's snoring, and I heard it too, but I was trying to ignore it. And then
what is that?
It took me out. I couldn't help myself.
Joey's killing me tonight.
He's on a Joey. This is a Joey level show this evening. Like it feels right. But Nick, those were the two names mentioned, and it makes sense because they both cost a lot of money. Belly's $27.5 million this year. Nico's $11.5.
Yeah,
and they're at two positions as well where you probably have the most MLB ready prospects at in Owen Casey and Matt Shaw. So it would also provide positional flexibility by moving on from those two names. And I think that's why they're a part of the reports. But regardless, at the end of the day, yes, the Cubs are going to have to get creative in trades. And I want to hear your guys' thoughts. I have a couple of trade possibilities, or at least players I'd like to see them target and want to see them go after. And I would love to dive into this with you guys now. Joey, I'll let you have the floor first here, my guy. What is a trade that you want to see the Cubs execute on this offseason?
I'll go unrealistic first. And this is what I want. Would love them to find a way to get Royce Lewis from the Twins.
Okay.
I don't think they're selling him. And that guy has had a bunch of injury issues. But when that guy's on the field and he's still under a long-term team control, like reasonably cheap right now, like very cheap. He's going to cost you a lot still, though, because of his upside potential. When he's on the field, he's an MVP caliber player. That is who I want them to go after. And then package it with somehow with like a Paredes or, somebody else. I don't care who. It's not going to be a 1-for-1. It's going to cost you more than that. But, that's the obvious to go in that deal because Paredes, you found your third baseman at that point. Which actually his defense has been kind of questionable, I think.
Who's?
Royce Lewis.
He's 72nd percentile and outs above average with a 1. It's a 1, but he's...
Yeah. I know that there were some Twins fans that were like at moments, but he's young though too, right? So I mean, like it's not.
Yeah,
it's a better
25.
It's a better situation than like a Christopher Morel for comparison. Like it's not like he can't play the position, or like you're like, oh, we're trying to force it, or something like that. But that would be like that is your impact level bat waiting to happen if you can somehow find a way to swing it. The other guy is kind of mentioned. Actually, I saw it dropped into the Cubs Slack. I think you did that, Ron. Alec Boehm would be a very quality because he's good on both ends. He's a good defensive third baseman. He's a quality hitter. The one thing about him is he doesn't hit for a ton of pop, but he's just a very good overall all-around hitter, and he's still young. I think I could be wrong. Maybe 2 more years of team control. Could be wrong on that. So
I'm looking. Ron's on research mode right now.
Yeah, but if you can find a way, so the Cubs, what the Cubs have that I think the Phillies lack, and Ron, you'll like this little throwback because this was one of your guys with what you used to follow back when you were a kid or in your youth. Carl Crawford's son, Justin Crawford, the outfielder for the Phillies. That's basically like their highest ranked. Well, it is their highest ranked outfielder, and it's the only thing that he doesn't have. Like he's got speed and everything. He doesn't really have a lot of pop. So they're missing that from the outfield, and the Cubs have plenty of outfielders that they can kind of package together or offer the Phillies if they want to improve and kind of like, I wouldn't say that they're selling with Alec Boehm, because what you can do is you can do this a couple different ways. You could package a Paredes or someone like him. Maybe it's a Nico Horner, and you package that with an outfielder, and they're kind of buying as they're selling, because Austin Hayes and like Brandon Marsh, solid outfielders. Like Marsh is a little bit younger. I think Hayes has I think it's just this year left of team control since being traded for.
Correct.
Since they got him from the Orioles. So like he's a solid player, but he's not. Him and Brandon Marsh combined, they could use a little bit of an uplifting between left and center field. So I really think they're a pretty good trade partner with the Phillies if you want to make an outfielder flip with one of their positional players and go and get an Alec Boehm. I think that actually solves a decent problem. Maybe you slot in Alec Boehm at second base and you go and get another third base. I don't know if Boehm can even play second, but that's just kind of what I'm thinking here. What do you guys think?
So I will, let me follow up with a couple of stats here, Nick, and then I'm going to let you take the floor because I'll hold on to some of my thoughts. Royce Lewis, you noted their young player. He's 25 right now. He'll be 26 next season. He is under control for a hot minute. He's only due to make 1.925 in arbitration this year. He has 3 more years of team control. So he's through 2028 before he becomes unrestricted free agent. He will not be a free agent until the ripe age of 30. So a lot of time under the belt for the Twins. He absolutely would cost an arm and a leg and perhaps the biggest toe on either one of your feet when it's all said and done. In relation to Alec Boehm, the reports are more that like they're trying to shake up their team, right? So that's a team to me that would do like a major league for major league level trade. Boehm was really good last year, guys. I mean, this is a guy that's in the last 3 seasons has not hit less than 2.8 or 274. He's been, a mid 700s to high 700s OPS kind of guy. Huge RBI season a year ago. Obviously, you could credit a lot of that to, the team he played on. Let's just be brutally honest. Not a ton of power, as you mentioned, right? The 15 homers, but 2 consecutive seasons of 97 RBIs. He had 44 doubles in 2024. That was second in the National League.
That's and his crazy
2 doubles. That is. And his his average was 14th in the NL at 280. So this is a guy in the last 2 seasons that you look at that has played more than 140 games in each of those seasons, has more than 30 doubles in both years. He had 31 doubles in 2023. He has at least 15 homers in both seasons, 15 in 2024, 20 in 2023, and consecutive 97 RBI years. Good ball player, and he plays third base. Right? I've seen a lot of the Isaac Paredes name get kicked around in trade rumors this offseason for one reason or another, pardon me. So I like the Boehm idea, Joey. I really do. That's one that I've kind of liked Boehm a little bit as well. I also like Boehm because he has positional versatility. He can play first base. They played him a lot at first base in Philadelphia. So that's a guy that, doesn't have to play there every day, but if you want to play somebody else at third base on a certain day or, whatever, he can bounce around a little bit if you needed him to.
I got a question that I don't want to derail the Bohm talk or any trade talk, but do you guys think that the Cubs would ever consider moving Michael Busch back to third base?
Ooh, I don't think so.
Okay.
That's just my personal opinion. Nick, do you disagree?
I don't know. I don't disagree. Do you ever think they would DH Michael Busch?
Well, they can't because of
Yeah.
Sale.
I mean, they could. Well, anybody can be DH at any point.
Yeah.
But like,
Sure, but then
Yeah,
you got
but to open up that spot,
yeah.
I don't know.
See,
Then
and
who's
that's
at first, Belly, or like what's he's still in the outfield?
Well, if you have a spot open at first, I would want to see a trade for Josh Naylor. I would.
yeah. Get on the train.
Ron, you were saying that last offseason,
dude,
too.
he's so clutch. He's so clutch. And I honestly think that he'll have a good transition from AL to NL and just end up destroying like the Brewers just because he's a thorn in the side of division rivals. That's just how he is. He's so clutch too.
Dude, he
so
added so much pop last year. Like his home run totals went bing.
Yeah. That's what we need. We need power.
He went from 17 homers. Now, mind you, he did have a pretty big dip in terms of his batting average for that power. Like he made some, you can tell he made some adjustments at the plate. This wasn't just like it magically put together and he was still hitting for average, because he went from slashing 308, 354, 489 in 2023 with just 17 homers to slashing 243, 320, 456, but finding his way into 31 bombs. So he actually regressed. He was a 776 OPS player in 2024 after being an 843 OPS player in 2023. 843 would have put him right around the same area as Suzuki in the final rankings, which was good for like top 25 in baseball. So, that's something to consider with Naylor. I do like Naylor as well. Nick, you said it best. He eats division rivals alive. I mean, that's just what he does. And he's not a huge... he squares it up a good amount of the time. He's, he strikes out at an average rate. He doesn't, he whiffs at an average rate. Like he does a lot very average, but the clutch factor, right? It feels like every time he has a hit, it's a big hit in a big situation. And it's hard to quantify that sometimes, right? It's hard to find guys that can really pull that off. Nick, do you have any trades like Joey did that you just feel like are unrealistic, but it's a guy that you would like to see the Cubs swing at?
And the reason being, it's because you're trading with a division rival, but I would like to see Devin Williams, maybe, possibly. But see, that opens up the can of worms of if you lose on that, then it looks even worse because you've given up a lot probably to get him. And
I'll tell you what, the Brewers not picking up his option for next year, not even for this year, for next year, tells you all you need to know about Devin Williams.
Yeah, wasn't
something's not right there.
Issues or off-field stuff that we were
a lot of off-field shit, and there's been a lot of rumblings from a former agent on TikTok. I think a lot of people know who I'm referencing there, who says Williams is very similar to a former relief pitcher that pitched for the Brewers and the Cubs in one Jeremy Jeffress. So take that for what you believe, but but again, the stuff is certainly there. Don't get me wrong. I mean, Devin Williams has been one of the better relievers in baseball for the last
that's why it's
5-6 seasons now.
Too.
So, but certainly something to keep in mind there. Joey, I like the Bohm discussion of where you're going there. I think for me, I look at you. You mentioned briefly when discussing Bohm about moving him to second. I think the move to me that needs to happen this offseason is Nico Horner is going to be valuable to somebody. And for that dollar value that he's at right now, and he's locked in for another season after this one, to me, that's the place. Like, that's the place where you can move him, create some positional versatility. Because to me, dude, Matt Shaw's probably your second baseman.
Dude, he's
so good. He's been so good. And that's on our list of things to talk about. So I'm not going to get too deep into that yet, because that's what we want to kind of wrap the show up with. But I think, too, again, like I was talking about, Joey, when you were a little bit off there, and Nick, apologies, I'm going to repeat myself, but that's where the Bellinger thing makes sense, right? Because it's positional versatility, it's dollar flexibility, things like that. And you can make the argument that maybe a Cody Bellinger going to Philly in a trade for Alec Bohm is a way that The Cubs could free up dollars because Bohm's due about 8.1 in arbitration this year. And then you have Isaac Paredes, who you can also move in another trade. And I would like to see a guy like Isaac Paredes and maybe a Nico Horner. Maybe you move both of them to the Seattle Mariners. Dude, Logan Gilbert would look so good in the Cubs.
Oh,
like
stop it, Ron. Stop it.
If we're finding the one guy that in that rotation, like, don't get me wrong, I get it, and I'll give credit where credit's due. I've been listening to them a lot this week. I've actually been talking to Matt Cozy a lot this week on X, but like the Lockdown Cubs guys were talking about, maybe a Luis Castillo, because the Bellinger Castillo money is very similar and it's kind of an offset for both teams, and they improve in areas they need to improve in. I don't hate that idea, and Castillo's not locked up long term because he's a little bit older. But to me, if you're going to take a swing and potentially depart with one of your big prospects, maybe a Kevin Alcantara, maybe it's Alcantara, Paredes, and Horner for Gilbert and a prospect, I would do that trade 10 times over and twice on Sundays. Because Logan Gilbert, like I knew Logan Gilbert was good, but this is absolutely what I like to consider I call it the Mike Trout effect of if you just, unless you're the Dodgers and you play on the West Coast, nobody realizes how good you actually are because you play when everybody else is sleeping. But dude, 3 consecutive seasons now, ERAs of 3.20, 3.73, and then this past season, 3.23. He's started 32, 32, and 33 games in the last 3 years. He's only 27. Oh, and by the way, he pitched 185 and 2/3, 190 and 2/3, and then 208 and 2/3 innings with 174, 189, and then 220 strikeouts this year. Logan Gilbert is arguably one of the best pitchers in baseball that nobody talks about. And I would not put it past the Seattle Mariners to be really freaking stupid and do something like trading Logan Gilbert. Especially if the Cubs dangle them bats, which is what they desperately need. Hey, here's a Nico Horner who will thrive in your semi-big ballpark and play good defense for you, which feels like something you guys need. Oh, and here's Isaac Paredes, who loves to pull the ball. That's a pretty pull-friendly stadium that they have up there in Seattle. Here, take this guy. He's going to hit a lot of homers for you and play a good third base. And then maybe you give them, like I said, maybe it is Kevin Alcantara. Maybe it's if you have to get really crazy, maybe it's a Jordan Wicks or something like that. And maybe you're getting another player in return. Maybe you're getting a bullpen piece or something like that. But wow, would Logan Gilbert look good? And that addresses your issues. Your top of the rotation arm. He's 100% your ace. He's a 200 inning guy. And I think I know Justin would love to be a 200 inning guy too. And I think it's possible. So you have 2 true workhorses at the top of your line or your rotation with those 2 guys. You have Shota, who's got some of the wipeout stuff, and maybe you can, maybe he keys up a little better being kind of your third guy in the order through of the rotation. And then Jameson Taillon and Javier Assad are a really good 4-5. Like that's a rotation that if you get a couple of bats that you can kind of mosey in there, maybe you get a little bit of Owen Casey. Right? Because there is the Michael Busch rumblings of potentially moving on from Michael Busch. Do you try to convert Owen Casey to play first base at that point then maybe?
I think he should be able to play that, yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe you get Casey and Shaw in the lineup that way, and there's some of maybe there's some pop coming from those 2. And again, they're prospects until they're not prospects anymore, like I always love to say. But like, dude, that starting rotation, and if they fix the bullpen, or they just get some more established names in the back end of the bullpen to join the likes. There was a comment a little bit earlier, I believe it was from our friend Jeremiah, talking about Porter Hodge being a beautiful 8th inning guy.
Yeah, he's
Yeah. You got Hodge as a really good 8th inning guy. Maybe you bring back Jorge Lopez again to be kind of a 7, 8, 9 guy. You can just kind of you put him wherever you need him type thing. And then you maybe Luke Little gets a little more right. Pun not entirely intended. Maybe Ben Brown officially just becomes a full bullpen guy, but he's a really high-end weapon out of the bullpen. Maybe Hayden Wesneski dials in and is just like that 2-inning guy for you out of the pen. That to me is where they can really upgrade, and it's going to get a guy like Logan Gilbert, which I think would look really, really good. The other trade, I really love your Naylor trade. Vic, I do, because I that's a guy that I was big on last offseason. I really wanted them to go after Naylor. I thought it made a ton of sense, and you've seen why. I mean, the dude's just a ball player. But I think another really nice move that I would like to see them make is, and I this is my unrealistic one because I know it's not going to happen, but son of a bitch, just call the Toronto Blue Jays already, please. Go get Vladito. Pay him whatever the hell he wants to play first base for you. And he was one of the best players in baseball last year. Like, nobody talked about how good Vlad Guerrero Jr. was last season. Like, don't get me wrong. Yes, Aaron Judge was phenomenal. And, Juan Soto was phenomenal. And, freaking Shohei Ohtani was phenomenal. Yes, they were all phenomenal. You guys are baseball savant fans, right? Of course you are. You understand what batting run value is. Numbers. Vlad was a 98th percentile batting run value with a 47 last year. You add that to the Cubs lineup on a daily basis, that fixes a lot of shit. And it would look really cool. And let's be real. I would love 44 doubles, 30 homers, 103 RBIs, and a 940 OPS in that lineup.
Yeah, you think?
Yeah.
Because let's say maybe you don't trade Bellinger, right? And maybe you do trade Nico and you trade Paredes and you trade a prospect to Seattle and you go get Logan Gilbert. And you go, well, shit, what are we going to send to Toronto? You send Michael Busch. Maybe you send Owen Casey if you really need to. I think you probably do if you're going to go get Vlad. But holy shit, dude. Could you imagine if your outfield was Hap, PCA, and Bellinger, and your infield was whoever at third base? Maybe it is Bohm if they somehow pulled that trade off. Maybe it's Bregman. Maybe they go sign him for a couple of years. And it's Bregman, Swanson, Shaw, and Vlad with Suzuki as your DH.
That would look good.
And then you get a second catcher to complement Amaya.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. Can we, dude? That actually. I mean, it's a lot you're asking to happen.
Oh, I know. It's again. There's a reason I said it's unrealistic.
Yeah.
But God,
that would be freaking sweet, though.
I mean, and I think the
That would be
thing
awesome.
is because it felt like last year, Vlad, the power came back late in the season. But even when Vlad wasn't hitting for power early in the year, he was still hitting for the average and the RBIs were there. I mean, he was getting on base. He put up outside of home runs and RBIs a better season in everything except slugging on base than he did in his 2021 season, where I believe he won MVP, no?
He ended up finishing around where he needed to finish, even though the sluggish start. And he still had those streaky moments.
Sure.
Early in the year, I think he had some games where he had 2 home runs and a ton of RBIs, or he had a little bit of streakiness to him early. And then, yeah, dude, he's just a solid. He's the thumper that you can count on.
Mm-hmm.
Let's put it that way. He's a thumper that you can count on. Who wouldn't want that in your lineup? I love that trade idea. I'm kind of shocked that I don't know. What are the Blue Jays really? What are their real thoughts here? Because what are the Blue Jays? I guess that's been my biggest question for the last 2 years.
It's a fair question.
I thought they were contending. I thought they were going for things. I thought they were supposed to be good. They are pretty good, but then they're not. Then they're not that good.
Yeah.
What are the Blue Jays? Because
then they are kind of good.
Question, if we could answer that question, maybe we'll get some freaking stuff happening. But then Bo Bichette had the down year too, so it's right. I don't know, man. I love that trade though.
I'll tell you what. The one reason I think you have to send Owen Casey, obviously he's probably going to be a pretty good ball player. I think he's going to be a good ball player in the major leagues. He's Canadian. You don't think that city would rally around Owen Casey being on the team? Definitely. He played for Team Canada at the World Baseball Classic, right? I mean, that would be that's the dream come true for Toronto to have a Canadian star for your only baseball team in your entire country. Yeah, if you're going to get it done, that's what has to happen. Now, don't get me wrong. You're probably also sending Cade Horton and another top 10 prospect. It's going to be a lot if you need to go get Vlad. Hell, you might have to send you send Michael Busch and maybe you are sending, something else too. I don't even know, but It would be crazy, but we can dream, we can hope, But gentlemen, I think at the end of the day, right, what this tells us is like this is where the Cubs have to get creative. Jed has to get creative. They're probably going to have to use the trade market this year and leverage some of your prospect pool. I think right now the only two prospects that truly feel major league ready are probably Owen Casey and Matt Shaw. I think everybody else has something in their game where like you should start at AAA and we'll figure it out from there.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it's some of those guys that you leverage. Maybe it is a James Triantos. Maybe it is a Kevin Alcantara. As good as those ball players are, those are probably the guys that you leverage right now. I don't think they want to get rid of Cam Smith because of what he did in limited action last year. I think they're excited to see what Cam Smith does this year in the minor leagues. He's probably going to start at AA Tennessee AA Knoxville. Can't call them Tennessee anymore because they're not the Tennessee Smokies anymore. Now the Knoxville Smokies. But
whatever.
Yeah, well, we gotta
I'm just
respect the names.
We gotta be correct here at Cubs.
Gotta be correct, but nonetheless, I think there's something to be said there, and it's going to be interesting. But before we get to our last topic here, gentlemen, and we ultimately wrap up the show, got to give comments and questions where love is concerned. Scott said trade Nico and Hap. Scott's going to pray to trade Hap until the day he dies.
Yeah, he's been.
We love you, Scott. I gotta give you some shit.
Keep Patrick Wisdom by all means, Scott. Right?
Sure. Just keep him. Trade some prospects for Pittsburgh's closer, which is Bednar, is what Scott said a little bit earlier. Right. Jeremiah would love to see Mason Miller. I just don't see that happening because
he's going to give up so much.
We would all love to see that.
Would cost so much money. It's so much in terms of prospects. Scott says sign Trevor Bauer, and then Jeremiah followed it up with saying Trevor Bauer deserves to be on a major league team. I mean, he's good enough. He's certainly good enough. Jeremiah followed up Danny Jensen maybe as that catching option to complement Miguel Amaya. Wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. And then Scott was saying it sounds like a lot like the Big Papi Red Sox when we were talking about Vlad Guerrero. But gentlemen, this is who we got to talk about to finish up the show. Oof. Not only is Matt Shaw not real, that mother effer. Well, we could say we're more than 5 minutes in the show. That motherfucker is not real, according to Jeremiah. May I read you his premiere? So for those that maybe don't know, because I think a lot of Cubs fans are still checked out until a lot more signings start happening. There is a tournament every year. And now, mind you, John Morrissey mentioned this, that some very notable names have played in this tournament and done well. And it's kind of been like that leap pad for them to the major leagues. Dalton Varsho among those names mentioned, Jay Cronenworth, Alec Boehm, who we talked a lot about tonight, was one of the names. So, like, some good ball players have thrived in this Premier 12 tournament that's going on, and it's all the nations playing each other. So, Team USA, it's not major leaguers, it's some minor leaguers. Rich Hill's pitching for Team USA at 44 years old. Like, it's kind of I'll call it
Rich Hill's playing.
He is, yeah. I think he was pitching today actually for Team USA. No bullshit.
Wow.
But
great. I've loosely followed it and just mostly the Matt Shaw stuff.
100%. That's where I've been following as well. And so the Premier 12 tournament is just international tournament. And Matt Shaw is doing some crazy, crazy shit. Now, mind you, they've only played so many games. They haven't played that much yet. I think they've only played like 3, maybe 4 games. It hasn't been that many. But Matt Shaw has, and this was as of 11-14. So this is as of today, before today's game. This was as of this afternoon. I think they played tonight. Matt Shaw's batting .667, which is first in the tournament, the Premier 12 in total. 9 RBIs, which 7 of those he had in one game. The only other player to ever have 7 RBIs in a game for Team USA was Ken Griffey Jr. and now Matt Shaw. Wow. 10 hits, which ties him for first in the tournament. 6 runs scored, which ties him for first in the tournament. 3 stolen bags, which ties him for first in the tournament. And 2 home runs, would also ties him for first in the tournament. Gentlemen, Matt Shaw has been really fucking good. And personally, after a really good season last year, split between AA and AAA, where he actually got better at AAA than he was at AA, if Nico Horner is used in any trade this offseason to improve the pitching staff, to improve another position in the field, I think it's safe to pencil Matt Shaw in as your starting second baseman because he's been playing third in this Premier 12 tournament, but I just don't know if he has the arm to consistently be at third. But he slots in beautifully at second base and could deliver you a lot of pop and a lot of big hits that could be the spark plug for this Cubs team next year because, dude, he's been hot in this Premier 12 tournament, and it's hard to ignore.
Yeah, that's what he's doing is, man, my first thought is, wow, this is the guy that we thought when they drafted him, because like we all basically were on the mics saying, and I remember like me and Juice were like, giving like little scouting reports about like what we saw or like what we kind of were projecting out of him, and then we all kind of discussed it, and you guys all, we were all on the panel or whatever. And like, I think what I said was like verbatim was, this could be a guy that moves quickly through the system because he's a pretty advanced hitter. Like, and he's kind of showing that because he really hasn't been in the system very long. The only pushback I'll give to like this, and I like how you backed up his potential readiness with and like success, MLB success, with guys that have shown success in this league or in this tournament.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Varsho and Cronenworth stuff that you were talking about. The only like pushback I'll give on that is, I don't know, like guys can get hot for a stretch of period at any given time, whether it's the majors, the minors, a random tournament. So I don't know how much of like this in particular tournament is a precursor for how good he's going to be in the majors, right? But like that just goes to show you how on he is right now, and like his development is coming along because he's facing some MLB caliber players in this tournament. Like this is, you just mentioned Rich Hill is pitching in this tournament and some other guys. Like, of course, that's Team USA, but I mean, there are good players in this tournament here. So like he's getting quality at bats, getting quality playing time, and the potential is totally there. Is he going to be ready by opening day? I don't know, but I totally am down to see if he can be someone who's going to be ready by opening day, especially like you said, a guy like Nico Horner, who we all love. Like, I don't want anyone who's watching or listening to this be like, these guys hate Nico Horner. They've thrown him out in every single trade discussion option that there is possible out there. We like Nico Horner a lot. Like, this dude can play. We know he's got great defense. He's a great contact hitter. But like, you look at where the Cubs can improve, and they can improve in some spots and use that as a chip to, I think that's really what we're looking at, is use it as a chip to improve elsewhere and get like some thumpers in there. And, now that we're on the minor league topic, and I know Nick, we want your thoughts too, or I want to hear what you think about it. But like James Triantos, like he's another guy who's like a second base, third base kind of guy. Like if Matt Shaw can stick at third base, and we always talk about if they can be what they can be, what they're showing, blah, blah, blah. And that's why I get like kind of sick of the whole minors topics. But like, it really looks like the guys that we've been talking about for a while are that much closer, because PCA is looking like he's panning out at this point, right? The guys who were the high chip guys, the blue chip type of prospects you had in your system, are starting to look more and more like they're going to pan out. Triantos is close. Mo Baller is close. Moises Ballesteros. Owen Casey's close. And so Alcantara and Matt Shaw. Matt Shaw probably maybe the most ready. But there's some moving parts where there's teams that are looking to buy MLB ready talent. So maybe instead of using some of the prospects as bargaining chips, which you're still going to have to do in some of these deals, maybe it comes from some of the MLB talent, like the Paredes, the Bellingers, the Nico Horners. So then you can fit in the Shaws and the Triantos, and then you go out there and make a big splash and get somebody like a Teoscar Hernandez or something like that. I know that's crazy, but like there are some options. There's some avenues here where it's not like, oh, this is the outline of what they have to do. You have to go sign this player. Like, remember when they signed Dansby Swanson? Everybody knew that the impact bats were at the shortstop position, and you had to go get a shortstop. It's not as clear cut dry of what they should do this offseason. And I hate to bring it back to the offseason of like potential moves. But Matt Shaw, like, very much looks like he's fitting into what you need as a core player. So you need to consider, like, what other moves to make around him to be able to fit him in. And I know something that you always talk about, a looseism, I'm gonna call it, is, prospect is a prospect, like you always say, until he's not. And you don't want to block guys, like, and I'm not even talking about like blocking players necessarily. I just think you need to create, is diversity the right way to put this? Like, you need to create more openings for positions in impact bat levels. And I think
Yes.
Matt Shaw could be the impact bat that you need, and you can go fill it in elsewhere. Sorry, that was a long rant.
Nick.
No, I agree 100% with Joey, honestly. With Matt Shaw, he's definitely untouchable. And because of that, I feel like he's ready. I'm probably a little bit more ahead of Joey, but I feel like when I saw him last year, like, he just looks different. He just looks different. And obviously in this tournament, he's showing exactly what he can do. So when come spring training, I think if he looks really good, you do give him that leash and see what he can do for sure.
I think with Matt Shaw, a couple of fun comments here quickly from Jeremiah. Lucid Dreams. That's a good one. I actually really like that. That's really funny. That one's getting a gold
Should be
sticky
your
star.
Twitter name.
And also Jeremiah, that might be a good one actually. Jeremiah saying someone's phone is very busy tonight. That would be my phone, Jeremiah, because in case you didn't know, we use Slack at On Tap Sportsnet, and I'm in every single channel imaginable. So yeah, my phone buzzes and dings and rings all night long. It's almost nauseating, to be brutally honest. So that one's been mine. I apologize for the loud noises in the background, but I think this is what's most impressive about Matt Shaw. Not only, yes, what he's doing at the Premier 12 tournament is fantastic, and you can make the argument, well, it's just a couple games, it's a couple games. He played 121 minor league games a season ago. 86 at AA, 35 at AAA. In total, over the course of the season, Matt Shaw slashed 284, 379, 488, which is good for an 867 OPS. That's hot. 21 homers, 71 RBIs, 4 triples, 19 doubles, 78 runs scored. Oh, and he also stole 31 bases. He kind of gives you a little bit of everything. And was actually pretty good in the field. I was curious to see what his fielding percentage numbers were last year. Now, mind you, he obviously played a couple of different positions. He played 24 games at second base, 64 games at third base, and then 24 games at shortstop. He did move around a little bit, didn't just fully play at one position or another. But I mean, his worst position was third base, and he still was a 944 fielding percentage. So, I mean, he was batting 1,000 in terms of fielding percentage at shortstop, and at second base, he was a 979. So, like, he's a good defender. Maybe he's not Nico Horner Gold Glove defender, but he's good enough. And at second base, you can get away with that, especially when you have Dansby Swanson, who was snubbed for the shortstop Gold Glove. Don't even get me fucking started on that. All the metrics and numbers heavily favored Swanson over Tovar. Tovar was good, don't get me wrong, but Swanson not getting his third straight was a travesty. But Matt Shaw will give you so much more in addition to that, right? Like, Nico bats for high contact, and he has the good slash line, and he steals bases, but like Matt Shaw does that and gives you pop. And I think that's something that this Cubs lineup desperately needs, and it can really make a lot of good things happen when it's all said and done. Gentlemen, we're going to start wrapping this thing up here. It's been a good show. It's been good to be on the microphone with you guys again. Plenty to talk about. I'll be very excited once shit starts happening. The LA Angels appear to be the only team in baseball making any kind of moves right now. They're making a lot of little signings. Among those, obviously, was Kyle Hendricks. So we'll see where the Cubs go from here, what they decide to do. But I think we as a group feel that, the trade market's probably where it's going to come from. And it's going to be interesting to see what Jed does, because if this team isn't ready to improve this offseason and they don't look better on paper when CubsCon rolls around, the Boo Birds are going to be out at CubsCon. I think we're all fully prepared for that if something doesn't happen between now and the middle of January. Gentlemen, I do want to pass it back to you guys here really quick for any quick and final thoughts before we officially wrap this thing up.
Yeah, I have a final thought. If the Cubs sign Trevor Bauer, I will wear the mankini. That's how
Ooh.
confident I am that they're not going to even touch Trevor Bauer. I believe he has the talent to be on an MLB team too. I'm just saying, based off of the Cubs and who the Cubs are, there's no way. So, but it's out there now.
It's out there just for you, Jeremiah. It's out there. I agree. I don't think they're going to touch him either, but all right, man. I didn't think they were going to get Trey Mancini either, but we all saw that shit happen. Anyway, Joey, you're.
Yeah, I think it might be a little bit safer of a bet, but it's still a wild thing to volunteer yourself for, Nick. But no, a couple points. I guess Ron, you talked about Shaw's defensive versatility, and even though not being the greatest, I think that is going to come into play or can come into play when you are talking about a Nico Hoerner trade, because Matt Shaw not only can play third or possibly move to second, but that becomes basically your backup shortstop then possibly, which is what Nico Hoerner is basically serving as. Even though he's your starting second baseman, he's your go-to backup shortstop. So that also can play a factor there. And then the other thing with the Alec Boehm trade, I thought I saw somebody wrote an article, I'm not sure where, and maybe this was just somebody tossing it out there at a wall. I don't know. I think it was somebody's just idea of a potential trade with the Cardinals, including maybe an Nolan Arenado as a package, which to me would be kind of weird because it's third base for third base. The Cardinals would get younger. The Cardinals would have somebody under team control. Arenado, obviously, I guess would be geared more towards the win now, but Alec Boehm is also a win now player. So that's kind of weird. But I also, like, when I saw that article, I was curious if that would, if the fact that if it's true that the Phillies are really shopping Alec Boehm, does that stir the Cubs just a little bit more if you start to hear some of these rumors or ideas for Alec Boehm possibly going to a division rival like the Cardinals? Does that get the Cubs, juices going a little bit more, or give them a little bit more motivation to go out and get a guy like Alec Boehm? I don't know, but I think that would be interesting, and maybe something we need to watch for as these meetings kind of continue on this offseason. But yeah, I'm really interested to see what Jed does. Like you guys, I have no idea, and I just think that there's so many different routes that you can take, and we've also, like, even in off seasons past, and this is where I understand the pessimism among Cubs fans too. Please don't keep this like the exact same and try to run it back. But like, the other thing is, we've talked about ad nauseum, it feels like, potential trades happening and then not really getting them. Like, we got Michael Bush last offseason, and it was a good move. It was a good pickup. That worked out. Like, the moves Jed made, most of the moves he made actually worked out. Like, Shota worked out. Michael Bush worked out. Paredes, we're not sure yet. Like, that's an unsure move at this point. But Morel hasn't really been great with the Rays. That was an in-season move. But it's like the moves that you're not making that makes me skeptical about the moves you're going to make. And even though we're sitting here and like, oh, go make a trade, like, it's so obvious you can probably do some of this stuff. You also, it's very difficult because you got to find a trade partner, number one. You got to be able to talk to them and talk them into buying into the prospects or whoever it is that you're trading, and then find a really good partner for the potential trade. Like, so, I mean, a lot of this is obvious what I'm saying, but I'm both excited and, like, on the, like, skepticism side of things. Like, what are we doing this offseason? So I don't know. That's all I'll say about. But yeah, man, it's always fun to get on the mic, and look forward to many more here in this offseason. I think we're going to have a hell of a time trying to hopefully we have a lot more fun this season than talking Cubs baseball. I'm hoping
as well. There's nothing better to wrap up a show than a Joey Ricotta just brain ramble when you got to get all the thoughts off your head. There's a lot going through that noggin of yours, my friend. I know
Too
that
much.
for sure. A couple of things I have for final thoughts here, most notably are key dates that are coming up here in the near future. Obviously, the GM meetings just happened at the beginning of November down in San Antonio. The deadline for players to accept qualifying offers is November 19th. So that is Tuesday of next week. That'll be something to keep an eye out for, as well as the deadline to add players to the 40-man to protect them from the Rule 5 draft. That's the key note for the Cubs, because I believe players like Owen Casey need to be on the 50 or the 40-man. Ballesteros might need to be as well in order to protect them from Rule 5. So there's going to be a lot of 40-man moves, I think, made by Tuesday of next week. So Cubs fans, keep your eyes peeled, especially Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, for any of those coming down the pipeline. And then the tender deadline is the 22nd. Again, doesn't really affect the Cubs all that much, but they will have to tender guys that are potentially arbitration eligible. Otherwise, they become free agents if they're non-tendered. And then obviously the winter meetings are the 9th through the 11th in Dallas, Texas. And by Dallas, they're actually going to be in Grapevine, because if it's going to be at the Grand Ole Opry Resort, or not the Grand Ole Opry Resort, whatever the hell the big hotel's called, they got one in Nashville. It's where the winter meetings were last year. They have one in Grapevine, Texas as well. I've been there. That's exactly where the winter meetings are going to be. So obviously that'll be where we have a lot of fun, because it's the draft lottery, it's the Rule 5 draft, and hopefully for once in quite a few years, the winter meetings actually present something that will be fun and tangible. Quick final thought.
Last year was kind of lame, wasn't it?
It was very lame last year. Not a lot of shit happened at the winter meetings. Per Jim Bowden, the Dodgers are unlikely to sign Sasaki. So we will see if that actually happens or not. It'll be interesting. Be interesting to see what happens. But as always, we want to remind everybody, Cubs on Tap is one of two official shows here covering the Chicago Cubs. Check out our friends over at the Dingers podcast at Dinger Cubs on the socials as well. Check us out also at Cubbies on Tap on the socials, and subscribe, hit the YouTube button, or hit the subscribe over on YouTube on Tap Sportsnet. You'll know when all of our shows go live. Follow all of us. You know all of our handles by now. Follow Juice and Tyler as well as our friend Bobby Foster. I know he wants to and will be joining us at some point on the airwaves between now and hopefully the winter meetings is the goal. So that'll be good to hear from Bobby and see what he has on the Cubs this offseason, as well as always, Bears, Bulls, Blackhawks. You know the drill. And Cubs fans, send your friends to our friends. They can be friends over on the South Side, because former Cub Will Venable, now the new manager for the Chicago White Sox. So they have plenty to talk about there in terms of another phase of their transition, because it's an absolute dumpster fire at 35th and Shields. OnTapSportsNet.com, at OnTapSportsNet on the socials. The OnTap Sportsnet. We're going to check out what's on tap in Chicago sports. Boys, this was fun. It's been a while. It was good to get back on the microphone with you guys. Ideally, Cubs on Tap, we will be back next week at some point. When that will be exactly, not a clue, but we'll figure it out as we go, as we always do here in the offseason. And as always, if any big news breaks, we will be coming to you as quickly as possible upon it happening. I am Ron Luce from Nick Hudson, from Joey Ricotta. It's always been a pleasure. And what do you say, boys? Get out of here the only way we know at Cubs on Tap.
Fuck the Cardinals.
DMV is not bad. Make an appointment.
And let's go, Cubbies.